Good morning. Continuing our journey in Hemshech Samach Vav. We are coming to the end of the maamar Mah Yofis from the Frierdiker Rebbe Tofresh Sadik Aleph, 1931, where he's surrounding up what the Rebbe Frierdiker Rebbe wanted to discuss. So a big part of it is based on Samach Vav, and the parallel, where we are on page 257 in the Tofresh Sadik Aleph, and that Sefer maamar Tofresh Sadik Aleph, which corresponds to page 25 in Samach Vav. Okay. So the last thing we learned is overall we're discussing the journey, elevations of the soul from one level of spiritual or divine consciousness to a higher level. So there are commensurate levels, which means step by step, rung by rung, link by link in a chain, where you don't need a special leap, and one leads you into the next. Like he said, ad va'ad b'chlal, meaning you reach to a certain place, and that leads you into the next level. That's in general in the finite structure, as we learned about it in Samach Vav, because one level of intelligence brings you to the next level of intelligence. Wisdom is accumulative. However, when you're dealing with the divine, you're also dealing now with something that is Ein Sof, infinite. And there, it introduces the concept of paradigm shifts, where you're not just going commensurate step by step. That would be what we're most comfortable with in the world in which we live. We relate to the finite journey, but now we're talking about an infinite journey. And an infinite journey, even though it's only a reflection ha'ara of the infinite, which is Gan Eden, it's not Eden itself. It's not the etzem Taanug. It's not the core raw essential pleasure as we've been defining it of the etzem, meaning that state of being. It's an expression of it, but being an expression of Ein Sof, of something that is Ein Sof, is also Ein Sof, and therefore the levels go on forever. And in that sense, you need to take a leap from one to the next. When you go levels that are not commensurate to each other, you need the bittul that we've been discussing, that transition, which really breaks down into the Nahar Dinur, which is the fiery river, that does more like the cleansing, the divesting of, and the pillar, which does more of the absorbing into a higher state. And this is a paradox. On one hand, it's an endless journey. On the other hand, because it's endless, the higher you go, the more you recognize and the more you experience the awesome wonder and magnitude of the divine that's beyond you. And hence, you have the two interpretations in Adei Ad, when it says, HaMeshubach Mufur, Adei Ad Shmei HaGodel, that his great name is praised and extolled, or praised or glorified, however we translate it. Adei Ad, that Adei Ad has two meanings. One is Nitzchi, forever. It's an eternal journey, like we just discussed. That when it comes to, for example, praising someone in the finite world, so there's a point, because they're a finite entity, there's some point where the praise stops. How many more things can you say about a person? Like he said, you come to a point, you can't praise someone more than what they contain. We're talking about, obviously, in an honest and in a truthful praise. But when it comes to Ein Sof, it's endless. Adei Ad Nitzchi. The second interpretation seems to be the opposite, but he explains that it's not. It's actually interdependent. Shnei emes, like he said, both are true. Ad from the word ad po, ad kan. There's a boundary. Why? Because as much as you praise, you can never reach the etzem itself. And as such, that's the pause. Ad v'lo ad b'chlal. that you can get there, but you don't. Does not lead you into the next. So that is the second interpretation, and that's a level of ad v'lo yad b'chlal. So, like he says, shegami megia li'ilu hayeser gadol adayin b'chinas ad v'lo yad b'chlal. Even when he reaches the highest level, he'll never reach the Ohr Ha'atzmi. But the future, and that's what we're leading to the next stage. This is all in the present. In the future, we'll be able to access and experience the etzem itself. That's the ayin lo rasa of Eden, not just Gan Eden. I want to see one thing here. Okay. Good. And that's where we stopped, end of the paragraph on page 257. As I said, the Rebbe Rashab continues elaborating much more on this topic on page 25 in Samach Vav. The Frierdiker Rebbe is now going to actually take this now and conclude these two maamarim that we learned, Yichayenu and Mah Yofis, and bring it back to the initial questions that he asked at the beginning of the first maamar, which we'll soon see as we learn it inside, the ayin lo rasa. Whereas the Rebbe Rashab continues to discuss the difference between gvul and bli gvul, between ad and ad v'ad, ad v'lo yad. So I'm going to continue now on page 257 in Tofret Sadik Aleph, 1931. If you want to follow the pages, you can find them at our WhatsApp Samach Vav group. They've been posted there. And here we go. So the last line we learned was that we'll never reach that level of his true divine essence and even Ohr Ha'atzmi, the true nature of his Ohr. It's the last line of the previous paragraph. In the future, during the resurrection, when the shamas and gufim, basically the end of the entire process, where matter and spirit, body and soul will be joined again, that's when Atzmus will be revealed and be in a state of hasaga. And now he's bringing us back to that pasuk. And this is the ayin le'rasa, the imperceivable level that no eye has seen. All the neshamas, with all their elevations that we've discussed, even the highest levels of souls, they've never seen this level. Ta'gili de b'chinas Eden, because the gili of Eden itself, the essence itself, yila asid lave b'tchias hamesim. That will be in the future, b'tchias hamesim. How we reach that is yasel l'machakalei through our avodah, all these thousands of years of refining ourselves and the world, which is the kavanah atzmis of Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Atzmus Dafka wanted, like he explained in Samach Vav at length, not so much in this maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that it's through the Torah mitzvos down below that accesses this etzem. Whereas Gan Eden doesn't have that. There you access the giluyim, the divine revelations and expressions of the divine, but not the etzem. That's how we get there. But when will we get there? La'asid lave. And now he's going to go back to questions that he asked all the way back on page 243 in Tofret Sadik Aleph, when he first introduced Ayin Le'rasa. So I just want to go back to see what questions he asked there. 1 second. He asked the question, why does it then say Elokim Zulasecha? Elokim indicates on tzimtzum and Helam. I'm reading from page 244, where he first began this topic, the Frierdiker Rebbe. He asked, why does it say Elokim? Seemingly, he should have mentioned Havaya. Why Elikim? And now he's going to answer that. So he says, "V'amar kan shem Elikim dafke, Elikim zulasecha," which means I ayin leirasa. No eye could see Elikim zulasecha, except Elikim. Either means that only Elikim could see it, or no one can see Elikim except Hashem himself. So he says, why does he say Shem Elikim Dafka? L'fisha kol ha'gili ha'atzmi d'tchiyas ha'mesim. Because the entire core revelation, and since we're saying Gili ha'atzmi, we're not just saying Gili ha'gili. It's not just the revelation and the reflection of where we're experiencing it in a expressed way. The Gili Atzmi of Tchiyas HaMesim ha'yidei ha'voda da'achshav b'mitzvos ma'asis dafka. So here he does make reference to it, something that the Rebbe Rashab addresses at length. Just want to see where the Rebbe Rashab addresses it, just to give you the reference. I believe, one second, in a few places. One second. I think it's in this very maamar, Shuvah. Yeah, page 27 in Samach Vav explains at length that's through mitzvos ma'asis. The Frierdiker Rebbe is making, obviously referring to it, so he says like this, the whole Gili Ha'atzmi, how do we get to that? If all the souls on the highest levels of Moshe and the Oves and the other Marishan can't reach there, and throughout all the history, no soul could ever reach, how suddenly are we able to reach there? And it says, Ayin Le'rasa. It's an atzmistic level. The answer is because there's something higher than Gan Eden. There's something higher than all these Taanugim, all the levels of Taanug, even no matter how high they are, because they're all still a reflection of Ein Sof. They're not Etzem. What's higher? What does the Etzem want? The Etzem, the Eibishter Atzmus, wants that we should make a Dira B'Tachtenim, Dafke below in this world. So it's Dafke here, where we do Torah mitzvos in actuality, like he explains at length on page 27 and on in Samach Vav, Seif Maisa b'machshava tchila. The whole purpose of hishtalshlus was not to create Gan Eden. It was to create this world, and we would come into this world, and that's where the kavana atzmis, that's where the Taanug Ha'atzmi manifests. That's why it says, Nachas ruach lefonesh v'shamarti v'nasir etzeni. The ultimate Taanug of the etzem itself is dafka through mitzvahs below. The mitzvos ma'asis dafka. Ulechein hagili b'chinas Eden shu Taanug Ha'atzmi Ha'poshut hanelem yeh b'tchiyas ha'mesim. And that's why this level of Eden, the very core, seamless Taanug hanelem, which is concealed, ayin le'rasa, means it's fundamentally concealed, will be b'tchiyas ha'mesim. Why? The kabbalas haschad b'tchiyas ha'mesim hu beguv dafka. Because that's when the reward, which means basically the cause and effect, the ultimate result of all our Aveda will be when b'tchiyas ha'mesim, which is dafka beguf. Why? Because the guf is where the mitzvahs were done. I'm just looking at the footnotes, what they are referring to. Okay. Ulechein. And that's why. Harigama Ovis Moshe Rabbeinu, Olav Hashalom. And that's why the Ovis, the patriarchs, and also and Moshe Rabbeinu, V'chol tzadikim Reishi Alfi Yisrael, and all the righteous tzadikim, Reishi Alfi Yisrael, which means the leaders of the multitudes of Eden. Hagam shehem elim b'chol yem ba'aliyas nizgovis, though they elevate in awesome and tremendous levels of betanugim de Gan Eden ha'elyon, in the pleasures of Gan Eden ha'elyon, as we learned earlier, u'kemavur be'inyan ata kodesh v'shimcha kodesh.
Every day. Elim b'chol yom.
B'chol yem. They elevate every day in these awesome level of aliyas. Gan Eden u'kemavur be'inyan ata kodesh v'shimcha kodesh, like it explains in the inyan of ata kodesh and shimcha kodesh, that you are holy and shimcha, your name is holy. She'em taanugim elyon. What is shimcha? These are Taanugim Elyonim de Gan Eden Ha'elyon. These are the highest levels of pleasure in the higher Gan Eden. Asher Kadeshim Shem Neshamas Asadik Mi'alalucha Sela. That the Kadeshim, you say the Kadeshim Mi'alalucha Sela. Who are the Kadeshim? The holy ones, the sacred ones. Those are the souls of the tzaddikim Mi'alalucha Sela that praise God forever, bli hefsek klal, without any end. Like we said earlier, these are Ein Sof levels. It's without end, ad. Nevertheless, that's all in Giluyim. It's tremendous high levels. Hine b'tchias hamesim comes a whole new level. Tchias hamesim is not just neshamas begufim. Hare yavoyu kulam lislapish begufim. So all these neshamas, including Moshe and so on, there's one thing that's greater, and that's when the neshamas will manifest in bodies. L'kabel Taanug Ha'atzmi Ha'poshut b'chinas Eden, to receive the core and seamless and raw, you can say, and completely undiluted and unfiltered Taanug Ha'atzmi in Eden itself, not just Gan Eden. So now we're reaching into the etzem. And again, Samach Vav, he explained why, because that's where the etzem dafka wants a dira b'tachtenim. And the elyonim, no matter how high they are, don't have that cannot. That's why we say yofasha achas b'tshuva ma'asim tevim. That 1 hour of tshuva ma'asim tevim ba'elam hazeh in this world, mikol chay elam haba. What's elam haba? All Gan Eden, all levels. From all Chaye Elam Haba, 1 hour. He doesn't quote that right here, but it's essentially the same idea. It said most of this that we're reading now is that Frierdiker Rebbe is basically his own language. It's based on the Samach Vav. I was just looking inside to see if there are any actual quotes that he's quoting now. I think not. If I recall correctly, the Teichen is there, but the actual language is the Frierdiker Rebbe is writing this. And now he continues to explain, Ukiyadua, as it's known, the Tchias HaMesim Utainu Beguv Gashmi. That Tchias HaMesim, what is unique about Tchias HaMesim? That the Mesim, basically, that all the souls that's separated from bodies, Ba'elam Hazeh, in this world, meaning the present and all the thousands of years since the beginning of history, will return into the bodies. That means it's a Taanug Beguv Gashmi. As a matter of fact, this is where you have the disagreement between the Rambam and the Ramban, where the Rambam says that there'll be Tchias HaMesim to reward the body, but that's not the ultimate schar. Then the souls will again separate from the bodies, and the future will be only in the shamas. The Ramban paskins, and Chassidus, Kabbalah and Chassidus go with the Ramban, that the ultimate schar forever will be neshamas begufim. Because the Rambam is speaking more in Giluyim. In Giluyim, neshamas are superior to bodies. But from the point of view, etzem, the Eibishter wants in Yesh HaNivra, tachtenim. So therefore it's beguv gashmi, rak shagashmi yiyeh k'mo shoyeh koydem achet. However, at that point, the gashmi will no longer be the way it is today. Today, the Gashmi is flawed. Due to the sins and the transgressions, we misaligned the body from the soul, and that's why it says that after Chet Eitzadas, what does it say that Adam would die? It says if you eat from the Eitzadas, you will not live forever. Why? Because the Eitzadas separated their bodies from their souls. Basically, they separated their physical consciousness from their spiritual consciousness. That's why Hashem said to Adam, Ayeka, where are you? Like the Alter Rebbe explained to the minister when he was in prison. Doesn't mean where are you physically. Of course he knew where Adam was. Where are you? I don't see. You've betrayed your mission, your purpose. I don't see you as, where do you stand in your life? Are you aligned with the purpose for which I created you? Before Eitzadah, Chet Eitzadas, Adam and Chava were not ashamed of their nakedness. Why? Because like a newborn child, why should they be? It's part of God's plan. But then they became self-conscious. Then they developed a self-consciousness, and that self-consciousness, they felt ashamed. They covered themselves. So something now is no longer completely seamlessly connected. Once the body and the soul, his body is not completely aligned with the neshama and the kavanah elikis within the body, then it can't live forever. But Chiyas HaMesim comes after all the Avodah through all the centuries and all the millennia that repair Gashmias. That's the whole purpose of Tikkun Ha'olam, that we repair the pagomim, the wounds and the injuries and all the gaps, and we realign the physical world and our bodies to the divine. So then it will be Chiyas HaMesim as a result of that. So Gashmi will be Kinechat, Umakol Mokim Yemugbul Bahagbolas Desman Mokim. But it will be within a body. It will not be completely in spiritual states that are beyond time and space. It means that this whole Elikus will be manifest Tachtenim, down below, like he says. It'll be confined in the parameters of time and space. That's the Chiddush. That's not just, if you have just Etzem, or you have pure Ruchni, Nash Neshamas, then you don't have the Dira B'Tachtenim. The whole Kavan is that in Tachtenim we should experience these levels. And now he's going to go and back to the Pasuk, Yechayenu Miyamayim. And here again, let's go back on page 243, when he began the beginning of these two Maamarim that we've learned. He asked a number of questions and explained, Yechayenu Miyamayim, remember, meant 2 days Yamayim. There's two stages, what he called Elam Haza, and then came Elam Haba Gan Eden, like Gan Eden, and Yom HaShlishi Yakimenu v'Nichya Lefonov. And then comes day 3, will be Yakimenu, the Chiyas HaMesim. So Elam Haza, Elam Haba, Elam Haza, yeah, and then he goes, so now he's going to go back to these 3 stages. I'm just looking, I want to just see, I'm just refreshing my memory. Shachaim Yechaim Amitim Nichil Lefonov. Yeah. Yeah, and he explained, and he asked the question, what's the purpose of it all? He's now going to tie this all up as we're coming to the end of this mimer. So he says like this, V'zeu yechayenu miyamayim. So this, remember, these are 2 Maamarim that were said in 1930, actually, in Chicago, and they're a hemshech to each other. So Mah Yofis is concluding now the questions that he asked at the beginning of the Maimer, Yechayenu, the first Maimer. Beis Yamun, Ha'elam Haza v'elam Haba. So first comes Yamayim. Yamayim means 2 days. What are the 2 days referred to? 2 stages, 2 eras, 2 time periods. One is Elam Haza, which of course is all of history, this world. Va'elam Haba, here. He's talking about Elam Haba as in Gan Eden. The Elam Haba hu hemshech sheba acher Elam Haza. Elam Haba is what follows Elam Haza. Once the neshama finishes its work in this world, the neshama goes to Gan Eden and it continues its journey as we've been learning. V'heim beis yomim, shtei itim. 2 eras, 2 time periods. And then comes Ubiyem HaShlishi. Now comes a new level. Shutchiyas HaMesim. Yem HaShlishi is the future. Tchiyas HaMesim. Neshama is begufim. Oz Yakimenu B'kiyam HaGuf. Then we will rise. God will make us rise. He will lift us up. What does that mean? The B'kiyam HaGuf. The preservation and the sustenance of the body will be resurrected. V'aguf yegashmi, and the guf will be a physical body. We're not talking about a spiritual entity here. The guf is a physical entity. However, now it will be a gashmi that is refined and is does not have the toxins and the pollutants and the spiritual infections and impurities caused by sins. So it's Kamaykaid Machet. It's the way God, Yitzir Kapav Shalkosh Baruch Hu, the way God shaped the human being at the outset when He imbued within it a neshama, and it was completely aligned. Like we learned in Bas Legani, what happened with Chet Eitzadas? The Ikka Shechina B'Tachtenim Legani, Legnuni was there. The Chet Eitzadas caused the Shechina to be somewhat separate or concealed, stalik. But Chis HaMesim comes after all the Aveda that we refine the Gashmi. So now the Gashmi will be exactly aligned with the way the Eibishter wanted it. By Matan Torah, there was a small taste of it. Paska Zu Masan, it says, that the Ptuma, the impurity of Chet Eitzadas, paused, was interrupted for a while. But then Chet Egel brought it back. But Matan Torah did give the power to transform the material world. But Chis HaMesim is when it's actualized. And we actually transform the material world and the material body. So it'll be a body, but it'll be a body that's aligned. Therefore, like Kamoy Kedem Achet. And nevertheless, it won't be something beyond time and space. It'll be defined down here, the body, in the parameters and structure of time and space as we know it. That's why we call it Eish Shlishi, a third period, a third era. Means it's in the category of stages here. Because if it was completely beyond time and space, you couldn't call it Yom HaShlishi. Here we're calling it Yom HaShlishi, a third stage, a third dimension, a third time period. Third era would be the right word. V'nichya lefonov. And at the same time, Eish Shlishi to Oz. When v'nichya lefonov, we will live lefonov, he's saying, the pnimius. V'atzmus, the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So on one hand, it will be in time and space, in a physical body. At the same time, that will be united with and integrated with the inner. Nichya lefonov is teaching pnimius, the inner and core of Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Sheyi hamshachas b'chinas Eden Atzmei. The level of ayin le'rasa that we till now was not perceivable will be revealed. Eden itself, not just Gan Eden.
ביום השלישי יקימנו ונחיה לפניו.
Right. B'yom hashlishi. And now he's going to answer the question with Elikim. So why does it say Elikim zulasecha? On where it says Ayin le'rasa, so he says Umaskir kan. Next page. And he mentions here Shem Elikim. Next page, 258. He mentions the name Elikim. Elikim zulasecha. Because the kavanah here is not to be higher than existence. All this was possible due to the tzimtzum, which is elikim. Because the tzimtzum was what allowed there should be a body in the first place. Allowed zman u'mokim. There should be time and space. There should be structure. Because if you go Ohr Ein Sof before the tzimtzum, lo yhoy nesinas mokim le'elam is klal. There's no time and space. There's no body. There's nothing. There's no kalim. There's nothing to talk about except elikus. But here, it's all a result of the tzimtzum. The kavonas tzimtzum hudeishi elam gashmi. The intention of the tzimtzum is not an end in itself. The intention of the concealment of the divine is in order for there to be a physical world, via yiridus neshama beguf, and there should be a neshama should be able to come down into a body, va'idei birurim elu, and through the refinements, and through the clarifications, and through the separation. Yeh achar kach, it should then cause afterwards hagili b'tchias hamesim. He's summing up basically all the Torah mitzvos that we do in refining this world, the birurim. Dafka in this world, birurim. That in turn means we're refining the existence that was created by the tzimtzum, and we're bringing elikus into this existence. The essential theme is Samach Vav, that there should be a tzimtzum, and after the tzimtzum we should draw down the elikus through our Torah mitzvos, birurim, and then afterwards would be the Gili of Tchias HaMesim in that very guf, and the bodies, and this physical world, the Gili HaLikus all the way to the Gili HaEtzem. And I'm actually going to stop right here. Because the second part, the next is the end of the maamar, Mah Yofis, which we didn't learn because I felt, even though it's beautiful material and you can learn on your own, I just felt it's the Frierdiker Rebbe's maamar. It's not really continuation of the themes in Samach Vav. So I'm going to stop right here. I know it's not maybe so appropriate, respectful, but I think my explanation is a legitimate one, and I would definitely encourage you to read it on your own. It could help understand things, but because I didn't read the beginning of the maamar, I don't want to continue here either. Just going to be a little distracting for me at least. So I'm going to stop here. But what we do have is a full picture of how the Frierdiker Rebbe explained, based on Samach Vav, explained these ideas. And that was the intention in learning this in the first place, that we should go through the Frierdiker Rebbe's explanation of the Samach Vav that we have learned. And I'm ready now to return back to Samach Vav, but I'll stop for any questions.
It's like you said that he's continuing here. It's very beautiful, but I heard your point. But he's saying very beautiful things.
Of course. First of all, Mah Yofis means by definition beautiful. Look how beautiful Mah Yofis, right? He mentions about not an ave b'tanugim, yeah. Are there any questions?
Which neshama gets which goof? Is the Chias Amesim, and you have Gilgalim of Neshamos. I mean, are there more Neshamas than Gufim?
That's a good question, but I have to say this is off the topic. Yeah. So as usual, in case like that, I would defer to talk about that separately, not in this class. Yes, there's entire discussions on this topic. The Zohar asked the question. The Rebbe speaks about it. Chassidus speaks about it. I actually this past Sunday did a workshop on reincarnation. The one I posted, I did it by Zoom because of the snow. This past Sunday, and I discussed that more in detail. Was it posted? Yeah, I think.
I don't think the recording was posted. Okay. I know the class was, but
if you go on our AI, you'll probably find. I spoke about this a number of times.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it offline. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here, and I'm going to go right back to Samach Vav now. So we've done our part in learning the Frierdiker Rebbe's two maamarim, most of them at least, most of the second maamar, and with that, let's return to Samach Vav. That's what I'm going to do now. And as I said, I'll sum up what comes afterwards in Samach Vav, where the Frierdiker Rebbe stops. That leads us into where we're up to. So we're actually up to page 35 in Samach Vav. But the Frierdiker Rebbe stops where Samach Vav is approximately, not approximately, page 25. So let's quickly sum up what continues the Rebbe Rashab after page 25. So we just have a seamless segue and flow from what we just learned. So keep in mind that all this is the discussion about what the avodah of a person accomplishes, like we just said, that we can reach the etzem, and we do reach the etzem, the asid lave. However, to get there is a whole journey through all the giluyim, because we do have to refine ourselves. Let's not underestimate how much work is necessary. But the good news is, as the Rebbe points out, that after thousands of years of work, we are on the verge of entering the age of Mashiach. Well, not just the age of Mashiach, the actual Gilui of Mashiach, and the rebuilding of the third Beis Hamikdash, Kibbutz Goliath, and ultimately Tchias HaMesim. Why? Because all these thousands of years we've done this Avodah Saberurim, as the Frierdiker Rebbe just put it, or the Torah mitzvos that refines the material world. We're now and gone through all the aliyahs and the Gan Edens, all these thousands of years. Can you imagine how many aliyahs Moshe Rabbeinu and the Oves and all the neshamas, for that matter, have elevated literally thousands. Moshe Rabbeinu is not on this earth already 3,338 years. 244. Passed away 40 years after Mitzias Mitzrayim. Basically, it's over 3,300 years. And all that was all part of the process that we've been learning, the elevations in divine consciousness with a bitla between each level and level. So, and it's all to lead us to Ayin Le'Rasa, Eden itself, which is the Chiddush that comes through Aveda. Like he asked the question at the beginning of Samach Vav in the first maamar, what do we accomplish if we're just drawing down the Ohr before the tzimtzum, and after the post-tzimtzum, we had that pre-tzimtzum. So he answered two answers. One is it's now in Kalim, it's contained by us, and two, we actually draw down a Ohr Chadash, unprecedented Ohr that wasn't even there before the tzimtzum. And what is that? Eden, the etzem. The etzem is higher than the Giluyim of Ohr. Ohr Ein Sof Finite tzimtzum is a state of Ohr, but now we're growing etzem through the Torah mitzvos down below. That's the overall context. But the Frierdiker Rebbe Rashab continues. As I said, the Frierdiker Rebbe stopped more or less on page 25 of Samach Vav. So briefly, I'm just going to sum it up briefly just to refresh our memories. I also refresh my own for that matter. So I'm reading now, not reading actual text. I'm just going to quickly summarize page 25 through 34, the next 9 pages. So he says, Va'inyan, he says, that in levels that are commensurate to each other, the finite structure of hishtalshlus, there it's ad va'ad, one level leads you to the next. And he brings an example of seichel. A small seichel leads you to a greater seichel. And the seichel of ideas, as we understand them below, meaning in the more material level, become like an example that helps us understand more sublime levels. That's what he says here. So there, it's ad va'ad b'chlal. One level leads you to the next, like we spoke about rungs of a ladder, stepping stones or steps, or links in a chain. These are examples. The example of the links in the chain is from the Frierdiker Rebbe. That's, he says, that's all the levels, cause and effect, that are commensurate to each other. But in Ohr Ein Sof, even though there's also levels there, in Seviv, in Igulim, but here now you're introducing something that is infinite, where there are quantum leaps and paradigm shifts. So even though we understand one level, it doesn't automatically lead you to the next level because it's a whole new paradigm. So in the finite existence, like I gave the example, as long as you're still thinking in terms of physical space and time, yes, you could understand it deeper and deeper. But once you have to go to a new paradigm, then one lower level, because they're distant from one another. So there, it's ad v'lo yad b'chlal. And he gives examples as well in Seichel, where there you need already the elimination or the neutralization or the divesting of a lower level of understanding, or else it will confuse you from assuming a higher level. And he goes back to the example in Tefillah, the bitl and shiflus that you need in davening, as well as in Torah, in Seichel. And that's ad v'lo yad b'chlal. V'kolshken legabe atzmus emuven ech ad v'lo yad b'chlal, because like we learned, that the higher you go, the more you realize the awesome wonder or awesome grandeur, if you wish, a grandiosity of atzmus. Yesu yiflim meno. Okay. So I'm summing up now. I'm already middle of page 26, just to give you where the flow here. Damiti say idea about flow. Yeah. So the higher levels you learn, the deeper you can understand and appreciate the Atzmus. And how Atzmus is beyond comprehension and beyond experience and beyond expression, I should say. Okay, then he continues and says, and this is the process of the elevation of the souls in Gan Eden. So besides the fact that they go through a bittul from one level to the next, they also come to this awareness of how infinite, how beyond Atzmus is. Basically, as I put it in the words that I explained it, that once you realize through your experiences that you're still experiencing it, you come to a state of appreciating the state of being of something that doesn't need an experience, that doesn't need expression. It is what it is. It's an emes because it's an emes. It's a reality because it's a reality. Which is ultimately what Atzmus HaTaanug, we'll learn later, Bilti Murgish means Atzmus HaTaanug, a core Taanug doesn't have to be experienced. It's just a reality. We are so accustomed to experience, so for us, everything needs words, needs expression, needs definitions, needs parameters. But ultimately, the goal is to enter a place, to come to appreciate a place that's completely beyond that. And that too will be experienced, as we've discussed at length. And we'll talk about more, of course, in detail. And then he says, La'asid, this will be revealed, like Rosh Hashanah, Ayin Le'rasa. Like Rosh Hashanah, when Kol Yada Kol Pol, everything in existence, every product will recognize the producer. So this is Ayin Le'rasa, Kol Aliyas Akshav. So all the souls, even the highest souls, cannot reach there. But Yizgala Kameshu Bamitis, Be'elam Habal and Neshamas Begufim Bizman Asiyah. Okay. Then comes the next section. Yasal Machakaloi. I'm looking now at page 27 in Samach Vav. That's my mitzvos. And that's Kol Yisrael Yeshlam Chelik Le'elam Haba, because we're Amach Kulim Tzadikim through Torah mitzvos, Tafke in this world. And here he goes on to explain Seif Ma'asav Machshava Tchila, the whole discussion, what is Machshava Tchila? That there's Tchila and Sof. Machshava Tchila is even before the Tchila. Means even before you began your thought, what drove you to even have the thought? And that's the Neshamas Yisrael, the Hashem envisioning souls. Envisioning the souls that will come down below and do the Torah mitzvahs. That's what the Etzem envisioned, and that's what caused the Machshava the Tchilas HaMachshava to even begin to create existence. Like we spoke about, why did you build the building in the first place? Because you want a home for your children. So your children precede the home, precede even the thought of the home. That's what he discusses at length, page 27 and 28. How the kavan of Torah mitzvahs below is oila ba'atzmus mamish, higher than machshava v'ratzon, and that's why l'chein ha'idei mitzvahs b'pel mamish mamshichim b'chinas Taanug Ha'atzmi, because that's the kavan of pnimius v'atzmis b'chinas atzmus Ohr Ein Sof. I'm reading from the top of page 28 now, and that's nachas ruach l'fanei shamati v'naseh etzeni, the ultimate kavana, the nachas ruach, that Taanug Ha'atzmi. Atzmus Taanug Ha'poshut. Okay. Let's see here. Continuing on. Then he goes on to explain that, well, according to this, we'll understand what the Rosh Hashanah we say, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. Even though the Tchilas Masecha, the creation began at Chaf El. So why is Rosh Hashanah Tchilas Masecha? Because Tchilas Masecha means the kavana, not just the beginning of your creation, the purpose of your creation. Seif Ma'asav Machshava Tchila. That's on Rosh Hashanah, because the creation of the human being was in order for him to do Torah mitzvahs, which is rooted in the Taanug Ha'aposhut, and that's when the kavana of the whole kavana of creation was fulfilled. So creation itself is not Tchilas Masechot. Tchilas Masech is the kavana, the purpose of why God created it. That's Torah mitzvahs. Okay. Then began another To explain this, the Rebbe Rashab went into, and that's basically carries us through the end of the maamar in Samach Vav. If you remember, l'chol tichla re'isi kates, l'chava mitzvosecha ma'od. And he explained with different interpretations. What?
Mitzvoscha. L'chava mitzvoscha me'od.
Okay, l'chava mitzvosecha ma'od. Which is two phrases. That's a contrast. L'chol tichla re'isi kates, as he explained, is every end has a beginning and every beginning has an end with the different interpretations, different commentaries. He brought Rashi on the pasuk. He brought the Rashi in the Gemara in Eruvin, I believe. Yeah. He brought the Metzudas David, the Even Ezra, and later we're going to bring the Even Yechaya, another interpretation in the next maamar. Bottom line is, he says all that l'chol tichler yisikates refers to the Giluyim of seder hishtalshlus, where there are parameters, midah v'gvul, it's hishtalshlus eres b'kelim, and both the kelim have parameters, containers, they have defined parameters, b'chinas gvul, even the kelim of Atzilus, klei hachachma, klei habina, klei hachesed rather. And then he explained how also the Oyres of Atzilus have parameters. Even though Oyer on its own, you can argue, is shapeless. But he said, no, the Oyres of Atzilus also have midah v'gvul. Page 29 now, I'm looking at. And he explained it in detail. Because beginning with the Kav creates Milo Mata, the hierarchy of higher and lower. What does higher and lower mean? More energy, less energy. And that means there are levels. And he goes on to explain the levels. If you remember, he went through all the elements. Atzilus, higher than Atzilus, all the way Ak. And then he went through the world of Akudim. Well, even higher than Ak. Galgalta the Ak, Reshis Akav. All to demonstrate the hierarchy, that structure. And those are the level of Oyer, not just Kalim. Because you're talking about Kalim more than yet formed. And then he goes further, then he works his way down. Akudim, 10 energies in one container. And then Nikudim. And then finally in Atzilus, which is the Vrudim, where the full structure of Eris and Kalim. So what do you see from all this? That Eris also have midah v'gvul. So the Chol Tichla Reisi Kates is referring to the whole structure, infrastructure of the cosmic order. That's all defined by parameters. It's true, it's spiritual parameters and very sublime parameters, but still parameters and structure. Continuing on, I'm now looking at page 30. So then comes, he continued on, what happens after Atzilus? Even when the Kav itself stops, but the reflection of the Kav continues, and that's what defines, again, the structure and hierarchy of the lower worlds, of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. All the way to the point that Olam has become a Metzias of a Yesh, meaning they have now an independent consciousness, an independent identity, even though they are still have awareness of the divine, all the way down to the lowest levels where we don't feel Elokus at all. And everything we feel comes through our Aveda. So the Nimtza, just to sum it up, says Nimtza, what do we take away from all of this? The Klolas Gili Akav Yeshle Sefer Tachlis. The Chol Tichler Yisikates, that the general Kav has an end, has a purpose, has an end and a beginning. Because it comes after the tzimtzum, and therefore it's part of that whole infrastructure. Before the tzimtzum, however, he goes on, before the tzimtzum, you don't have these levels, which is now going to start leading us to levels that are beyond structure. Yeah, what's higher than tzimtzum and Yem Shekule Shabbos Menucha L'Chai Lamim, there'll be the Shvisa the cessation of tzimtzumim. That'll be Gilead Ohr Ein Sof mamish itself, and Nigla Kvedavaya. He brings the whole, and we have a taste of it in the Beis Hamikdash, as well as every Shabbos. This level that is beyond tzimtzum, higher than tzimtzum. Every Shabbos. And let's see here, just going through this quickly. Because every Shabbos is a taste of Yom Shekolei Shabbos, how it will be in the future, L'Asad Lavi. And then he goes on, and we also have this in Torah. We also have the Gilead Ohr Ein Sof Lamata, because Torah is rooted in Ohr Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. So when we learn Torah below, we're accessing a level that's higher than Milo Mata. So he's now already introducing, as you see, the beginning of Rachva, mitzvos ma'od, right? You said. So why? Because till now we're talking about the structure of existence. But now, through Torah and mitzvos, obviously, we're able to draw down levels that are beyond structure. The levels of Bli Gvul. I'm looking now at page 32. I'm good. I just want to sum up this whole thing until we at the end of this class. So it gets the Torah of Lamato, Lamailo. Let's see here. Yeah, he distinguishes between the etzem of Torah that was given down below and the giluyim of Torah that are in the whole hishtalshlus, but still but regardless, the fact that the Torah is given below, he says it's not because it's measured midav gvul, it's because it's the kavanah was it should come down below. So it's a different track than the kav hamida, which is all about defining and shaping the structure of existence. So bottom line, Torah is a gili that's higher than the structure of existence.
Where are you holding now? In the
The
summary?
bottom of page 32.
Thank you.
Torah is l'maylam b'chinas midav gvul, and that's why, okay, the ayin ershel gehenim is not sholta b'hem, ein lecha ben chedin, all the power of Torah. So that's the contrast between Torah and existence. Existence, l'chol tichler ishi case, everything has beginning and end and parameters. Torah introduces dimensions of the divine that are beyond dimension, that are beyond structure. And then he concludes, brings it back to ad v'aloy ad b'chlal and ad v'ad b'chlal. That seder hishtalshlus l'chol tichler ishi case is ad v'ad b'chlal. Because there, one level brings you to the next level because it's all within a finite structure. I'm looking now on page 33. So therefore, like Rashi says, he brings that even if you're not seeing the entire universe, but even when you're in one place, you know there are parameters, there are definitions, there is a beginning and an end. But aval ba'eda shalamayla hishtalshlus, which is Bli Gvul, this level that we talked about, Torah, there it's ad v'lo yad b'chlal. Because one level does not lead you to the next level. You need to have the leap. And every level shows you how more distant and more wondrous and awesome is that which is beyond you. In a shaykh sham hasaga klal, like we learned earlier. Flaw, good.
Gan Eden is only hishtalshlus.
Gan Eden is higher than hishtalshlus, but it's in the world of giluyim. That's why there's leaps. paradigm shifts in Gan Eden. But it's still Giluim, it's not the Etzem, it's not Eden.
Gan Eden Ha'olyan is in Bria, right? That's hishtalshlus.
No, but it's higher than hishtalshlus in Bria. It's in Bria, but it's not. Bria itself is lower than Gan Eden. It's a Gilui higher. We talked about this, yeah. Okay, and then it concludes the Chol Tichler Isi Kates, Giluim of Seder Shalshus Amida V'Gvul Isi Kates. That's through the tzimtzum, as he explains that according to the Even Ezra, and the Fizeh Tzarich Lefarish, when it says Rachva mitzvoscha me'ed, Hainu Shem B'chinas Eidah Shalamayla hishtalshlus. Where you say that your mitzvos are very expansive, that's referring to higher than hishtalshlus, bli gvul, where there's no beginning and end, and that's the gilui that comes through mitzvos and Torah and mitzvos. Then the final piece you may recall was about Shuvi Yisrael ad Havaya Lekecha. We talked about that Shuva reaches a level of ad v'loyat b'chlal, because to repair sins, the flaws and the you could say the pegomim, the injuries created by sins and transgressions, you need to go higher than hishtalshlus. So tshuva too has this power to go higher, and he explained this more in detail. Bottom of page 33. So it's ad v'loyad b'chal. That's Yisrael, Shuv Yisrael ad havaya lekecha. That's the ad. Let me just see here. Yeah. And the shamas are rooted, and it's dafka in the shamas. Let me just see 1 second. And it's all dependent on the shamas, because the whole world was created because of neshamas. So therefore, the elevation of the world, not just of ourselves, is dependent on the neshamas. We do our work, we elevate it, and God forbid, when there's chashalta b'veinecha, we also can bring it down. So that's why our sins also affect existence. The tikkun is through tshuva that reaches the level of ad v'layad and atzmus Ohr Ein Sof. And that concludes page 34, where we're up to now, leading into the next maamar, which we'll learn in the next class next week. Up to page 35, the maamar Lulav Rebbe. And we stopped there. That's when we went back to the Frierdiker Rebbe's maamar, but now I brought it back to where we are. So that's a summation. And I'm going to stop here, of course. Are there any questions? Okay.
There is a way to see it. I'm not in New York now. There is a way to see the Samach Vav inside. I don't have a Samach Vav.
SamachVav.com has all the pages of Samach Vav.
Thank you.
All the resources you need there, yeah. You also can see there all the previous classes. They're all now, every day they're posted with a description. We created a system, organized system. It goes on Spotify as well. So I'm going to stop here. So we finished the maamar Mah Yofis, at least the section relevant to us in Tafrei Sadik Aleph. We now made a summary from there back to where we're up to in Samach Vav, and we're ready to continue this journey. So I'm going to stop here. I'll stop.